How's it going, fam? Welcome back to Erica's EDC, and today we're doing a review of the Deer Rock Knives Barnyard Junior in 10V. I've been carrying this every single day consecutively for the whole month of August, and we finally get to do the review of this knife. It's absolutely amazing, but because this was the kind of guinea pig for the Creeley Blades sharpening emulsion cream, we're going to talk a little bit about sharpening, stropping, all of that stuff. There is a rainstorm coming in, so I'm really hoping I can get all of this in here before it starts, but we have a lot to talk about because this will be in multiple sectors. We have the steel to talk about, the knife as a whole, Greg as a maker, the sharpening, the stropping, all of that good stuff. So I guess we'll just get into it. So Barnyard Junior. This is Greg's EDC design. He did this one with a partial tang, and it's a very slicey, very utilitarian EDC knife. This one in particular is in CPM 10V. It is 3 thou BTE, so nearly as thin as you can make a knife. I mean, it's like a paper thin edge. Scott Larimore over at CD Knives did the heat treat for it. It's at 64 HRC. And 10V is one of my favorite steels because although it is a tool steel and it is not stainless, it's fairly stain resistant. As you can see, I carried it for the whole month of August, and it has been, you know, summertime, humid, etc. up here, and we only have a little bit of rust right up there at the tip, which was my own fault. But other than that, no rust, no corrosion really. 10V is a really wear resistant steel, which I enjoy. You guys know I love super steels. I love all steels pretty much, but super steels I really just enjoy for EDC because I want my knife to cut as a knife for as long as possible, and super steels tend to do that. 10V has 9.75% vanadium, so you're getting a really good amount of those hard, really hard vanadium carbides. It just holds an edge forever, and I have found that it is tough enough for me. I'm pretty sure it was supposed to be kind of like D2 in the sense of like a way more wear resistant version of D2, decent toughness. I think on one site that I read, it said that in its annealed state, it was as easy to machine as T15, so not the worst thing in the world, but it's kind of like that higher end super steel, blade steel, but it's not like stupid level like Rex 121 or Maximate, if that makes any sense. It's not finicky like those steels. You can still sharpen it, being a novice sharpener. You can still work with it. It's not going to break on you. It's nearly the same thing as K390, if that makes any sense. 10V and K390 are very, very, very similar. So this isn't a steel that if you are a beginner, you need to like steer clear of, right? It shouldn't break on you, crack on you, chip on you. It's a really good wear resistant steel. So mine is very thin, very hard, and I thought this would be a perfect test subject for the Creeley sharp condition sharpening emulsions or stropping emulsions, which will be a whole other topic within this video later on. But basically, I was running this as my EDC knife, but also a perfect test dummy for some new products hitting the market for stropping. Let's go over just Greg as a maker, the knife design itself, all of those things first, and then we're going to get into the sharpening and the stropping because this knife has blown me away, and it's been a perfect guinea pig for those emulsions. I'm trying to get that edge. Look at how stunning that is. So I'll lower you guys down, and let's just talk a little bit about what this knife kind of reminds me of. Yes, you guys can see the dreaded best tester here. We're going to bring that in a little bit. We'll get that out of the way for now though. But this is a very basic knife. And that is not an insult whatsoever. I love basic knives. I love simple handles. I like drop point blades. I like, you know, simple, easy, user-friendly knives. I don't like Wharncliffes. I don't like Hawkbills. I don't like recurves. I don't like anything silly. This is what I like. This right here could be a one and done knife for me for the rest of my life, and it would be perfectly fine. This is absolutely perfect. There's nothing I would change about it. It very much reminds me of a couple of my favorite knives that you guys have seen a gross amount of times on the channel, but the Benchmade Bug Out, it really reminds me of that. Really similar in blade shape, handle shape. I mean, even look at how this area is. If you put them close together, they're really similar, and they are nearly the same size. I'm always awful at doing this, I'm sorry, but they're nearly the same size, okay? This basically feels like a fixed blade version of the Benchmade Bug Out. I love this knife. It's lightweight. It's just kind of perfect in terms of a slim, light, reliable EDC knife. The Barnyard Junior is basically the same thing, just a fixed blade version. Mine is a partial tang. No, this does not disrupt the strength, the toughness, anything. I mean, quite frankly, there are probably other parts of the knife that would break before the actual blade. And even then, I just don't think any of it would happen. Like, with an EDC knife like this, especially this thin, by the way, he makes them thicker. I wanted it this thin. You shouldn't be doing anything really stupid with it. You know what I'm saying? This isn't like a batoning knife. This isn't a camp knife. This being a partial tang does not affect my use whatsoever. All it does is enhance it and improve it. It makes the knife way lighter, nice and slim. There's just no reason for this to have any more metal going throughout the rest of it because it's not doing anything. So I absolutely love that this is a partial tang. Very, very light. I actually think this weighs about the same as the Benchmade Bug Out. I think they both come in at under 2 ounces, but very similar. Another knife that it kind of reminds me of is the TRM Neutron 2, another one that I absolutely adore. I had a really tough time with this at first when they did the first version. The second one is much better. This is a great EDC knife, super lightweight, super slicey, and again, if you kind of put them up against each other, they're kind of similar. Just not with the overall shape, but in terms of like a thin, here, let's kind of go like that. A thin, slicey design, good amount of blade width in this direction, just ultimate slicer, very similar. And then one other one that it kind of reminds me of, the small Sebenza 31. Again, just with the kind of simple handle, simple blade shape, just really universal, can kind of hold it in any which way. The Sebenza has always been a favorite of mine, and this is very straightforward. It's almost a straight knife, which I really like because, again, don't like recurves, don't like any of the crazy stuff. So very, very similar in use. This is way thinner, but you can get a thicker one if you need something thicker. Let's talk about Greg real quick, kind of what his inspiration is, why he makes the knives like this. Greg is a huge hunter. He's in Colorado. He is a guide as well, so he makes knives all throughout the year, but during the hunting season there, his main focus is being a guide. And when I was talking with him, he kind of had the same story that a lot of makers do in terms of, you know, going through a whole bunch of production knives, realizing they all fell short in one way or another, and making their own. So Greg, like a lot of makers, found that a lot of production knives, folding or fixed blades, doesn't matter. They were too thick, they were too heavy, they were, you know, the geometry was crap, the heat treat was crap, everything was kind of just subpar, and he wanted to make an elite version of it, if you will. So Greg makes a number of knives. They're all generally lightweight, thin geometry, you know, upper scale of heat treat, unless you request the opposite of those things. But his passion is making things as thin and light and useful as possible without overbuilding. Ounces matter when you're hunting, and if you are backpacking for 3 days in the mountains for elk, deer, whatever, sheep, ounces matter. So being able to pack a fully efficient knife, you know, under 2 ounces, maybe, you know, closer to 3 with a sheath, that's incredible. And using thin geometry and steels that actually hold an edge is super important, because you don't even have to pack a sharpening stone or a ceramic rod or a strop or anything. Using steels like 10V that are extremely wear resistant in a perfect world should guarantee that you don't really have to touch that edge, even if you get an elk, process it out, you know, touch it up when you get home, but it really shouldn't, it should be able to do that very easily without any interruptions. So Greg's ideology is basically less is more, and his craftsmanship is above and beyond basically anything I've ever seen. Now you have to remember, this has been either in my pocket or on my belt for a month straight, all day, every day, and it is summertime here, so this micarta has absolutely changed color. We have, you know, some like little areas where the ferro rod hit it up. This is a used knife, okay? But I want you to pay attention to the underlying craftsmanship of this knife, right? Look at Greg's symmetry work, his fit and finish, how even everything is, transitions, how smooth everything is. It's actually mind-blowing how ridiculously talented this guy is. Okay? This knife looks like it was made by a robot. It looks like it was machined, in my opinion. It is absolutely that perfect. Aside from the wear and tear that I've put on it, Greg is a machine. He's an alien at making knives. It's actually crazy. So this was a pleasure to use. It truly was. There's nothing about it I would change. The handle is incredibly comfortable. It's a subtle Coke bottle. We have just the tiniest little bit of curve right here, so if your hands were larger, which yours will be larger than mine, your pinky kind of can rest up against there. Extremely comfortable in hand. You can use it for eternity. He is making me a thicker version of this for like outdoor stuff, like bushcrafty type stuff, because this is so thin that, you know, you are a little limited with 3000 BTE, but he's going to make me a thicker version, which I'll show you guys when it gets here. But it's this knife, this model, this design is just incredible. It really, really is. There's nothing about it I would change. It did not fail once during my testing. And if you do predominantly slicing tasks, like if you cut a lot of cardboard and rope and whatever, and you don't do a lot of impact toughness tests, the 3000 BTE shouldn't bother you at all. This will cut and cut and cut and cut for days. You just don't want to do any kind of lateral work. You don't want to do any torquing in hardwood or anything like that with something so thin, regardless of the steel. This is very, very thin. But it held up fantastic to my testing, and Greg is a ridiculously good maker. So this, you know, this gets a 10 out of 10. There's nothing I would change about it. And Scott's heat treat of this 10V was phenomenal. I did sharpen it a couple times. We're going to start moving into the sharpening and stropping that I did with it, but let's just do a few tests because I did sharpen and strop it last night, and we'll do an arm hair test. We'll do a best test. I'm also going to include magazine paper that I filmed and a little bit of the sharpening that I did with it. I used Venev stones, and we'll, again, get into that in a minute, but let's just see how it does with the arm hair test. Bring you guys up for a minute. Okay, I need to use I'm using my non-dominant hand here because I have more arm hair on here, but I want you guys, I'm gonna see if the camera will pick this up. I want you to listen and see if you can hear the knife grabbing the hair, okay? It is so sharp, it actually gets stuck. Like, that is bald now. This knife is one of the sharpest knives that I've gotten in a while. So now I have a little bald patch right here. So I would say it passes the arm hair test. It is very bitey, very, very bitey. I will stop the camera here and put in the magazine paper and a little bit of the sharpening with the Venev stone. Then we'll hop back on here and do the best test. All right, hopefully that all went together as I planned, but as you can see, we sharpened the knife. It seems to do really well on arm hair, magazine paper. We'll do a couple of best runs for those people that enjoy that, and then we're gonna talk about the sharpening and stropping because that's where I really learned some stuff with this knife. Sorry that you can see the leg of the tripod Hopefully that doesn't bother you, but let's get a couple of best scores here and see where we're at. I am hoping it comes in at under 200 grams. So, and I like to run it on kind of the flatter spot, just like Gabe from the Home Slice does. He kind of mentioned in a video the other day that some people purposely, well, he didn't say some people purposely. He said he avoids the curved area because you can slide and then it's slicing the filament, whereas you're supposed to truly push cut it. And I have seen people use more of the curved area and do a little more of like a slice, which is kind of cheating the system. So Gabe made a good point, and he does what I do, which is try to put it on a little more of the straight part. That way you are genuinely pushing through the filament as opposed to slicing it. And it's starting to rain. Okay, first reading 146. We'll do 2 more just to kind of see where we're at, and I may have to resume this when the rain is over, but we will try to hold out. I am under a tree, so hopefully we can kind of wrap this up before it gets too bad. All right, so what was that, 146, I think? Hopefully they all come in under 200, and that to me is great. Okay, kind of the same realm, 157, we'll do one more. A guy named Tom, who I am assuming works at sharpeningsupplies.com, he commented on my best video the other day and said that anything under 200 for him is good to go, which I loved that comment because it's really cool to hear from people that actually work in the sharpening industry. It's nice to kind of hear what they find sufficient enough for them. I would figure they have fairly high standards because it's their job. So, what the heck? The numbers are changing and I haven't even touched it yet. It's probably a ghost. Every time I go above it, look, it changes to 2 grams. That's so funny. Okay. Now we're zeroed out. It's probably the ghost from the graveyard. $144 on that last one. So, you know, between we'll say between 140 and 160, just to be safe. So 140 to 160, and yeah, we could do more readings, but I don't want to take up the whole video doing best testing. So, you know, that's a pretty good reading in my opinion. The kind of like lower hundreds, that's really cool. I did a video on the best tester kind of talking about what those numbers mean and everything. So if you want to know what that score is even relevant to, you can go watch that. But basically this is, you know, utility razor blade type sharpness, which is more than sufficient for me for an EDC knife. And you also have to remember this is a freehand edge, so there's absolutely a level of human error in here and convexity, and it's not going to be an absolutely perfect edge, but I did do 18 degrees per side just like Greg had, and I think it turned out pretty good for being on the handheld stones from Venev. Now, let's talk about the sharpening and the stropping, because that's actually what really was exciting to me during this testing. I have already tested 10V before. It's a wonderful steel. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I think it's really good for people, even beginners, because it's not finicky. It is very easy to bring up a burr during sharpening. You do not need diamond stones. Does it work better on them? Yes, but you don't need diamond stones. You just need a high quality stone. But you can sharpen it on anything. You can touch it up on a ceramic rod. You can strop it on anything. It's not picky like Maximate and Rex 121 and those like ridiculously hard Z-Max maybe. I still have to test that one, but those, you know, 70 plus HRC steels that are ridiculously hard. It's not finicky like that. It just works really well for a really long time. Wear resistance. So what did I do with this? Well, the first sharpening I did, I filmed. We did some Nanawa water stones, and we did a whole freehand sharpening and stropping with this. We got best results in the end of 150 to 170. It was like higher 150s, kind of favoring the 170 area. Still totally sharp, totally fine. And we used Gary Creeley's sharpening emulsion. It's called Sharp Condition. It is a mono crystalline sharpening emulsion diamond leather cream. There are so many words I have to remember here, okay? So there are kind of two different types of diamonds that you can suspend in the compound. There are poly diamonds, and then you have the mono diamonds, okay? Something like Gunny Juice was the poly diamonds. Something like Gary Creeley's compound is the mono diamonds, okay? They all have their different pluses and minuses, I guess. What I found with Gary's Sharp Condition emulsion is that it was able to keep the aggressiveness of the edge when you stropped it, and it's really good at restoring duller edges. So we did kind of an interesting experiment, if you will, with the Gunny Juice versus the Sharp Condition. And again, I suggest you go watch that video because it's very interesting and it's in real time, unedited. But basically what I have found is that sharpening emulsion or stropping emulsions like Gunny Juice that have the poly diamonds in them, they're very fine in structure, and they're really, really good at polishing already sharp bevels. That I am talking in absolute general umbrella terms here, okay? I'm not saying that you can't strop a dull knife back with Gunny Juice. I'm saying I think what it's really good at, what it shines at, is polishing already sharp bevels and making them like see-through, essentially, if you do the right sequence. I think it is so fine that it's very good as a buffing compound almost on an edge bevel. What I have found as a negative of things like the Gunny Juice is that it's very particular about what strop you use. So I have found that for me, the Gunny Juice works really well on basswood, like just straight basswood. I have found that when you put it on leather, it's extremely finicky. And I think the reason why is because it's so fine, and it's also so liquidy that if you put it on like a plushy leather, it kind of just seeps down into the leather, and you would have to use nearly a whole bottle to get it to come up to the surface of the leather. But the leather itself is so plushy that it will, when you're stropping, it will roll up and over your edge. The only compounds that I have found that work well with the plushy, thicker, softer leather is actually the aluminum oxide compounds, because they're so thick and waxy. They just essentially clog the pores of the strop, and you truly are contacting the compound. Whereas with something as thin and liquidy and fine as Gunny Juice, like I said, it just seeps right into the strop, and you're it can be hard to even contact that compound. The aluminum oxide stuff, the waxy brick stuff that looks like a crayon that you literally color on, you'll see it in real time. As you color it on, it's literally clogging the pores of the leather because it's so thick and waxy. It's just like kind of creating almost a film over the top of the leather, and that's what you're hitting. So with the gunny juice, it seems to polish extremely well. And I'm sure if you get a larger micron size, granted it's not made anymore, but if you have a larger micron size, I'm sure you can restore a dull edge on it. I just think it really works best on the basswood or like ridiculously thin, hard leather. It seems to be very picky about that. I tried the gunny juice on kind of plain leather with this knife, and it actually dulled it. Then I really started experimenting with the Creeley emulsions, and that's where I really started to see where it is a niche area of the market in terms of stropping that we needed. So I have the Creeley emulsion on leather and on straight basswood. I have used it numerous times, and it can restore a dull edge to pretty good bass, under 200. It is starting to rain, of course. I might have to turn this off. We'll see. But the Creeley stuff is really incredible at taking a sharp edge and polishing it, but also making it even more aggressive than it was, like ridiculously grabby. It's a cream. It's a leather conditioner. So whether you put it on leather or basswood, it's very thick, and I just feel that when it dries, it's solid. It's pouring. Hold on one moment. Okay, sorry, I got rained on outside by your mom, so I had to come inside. We'll finish out the video in here, but I think we left off talking about compounds, okay? The sharpening emulsions, the aluminum oxide compounds, that kind of stuff. I want to kind of talk about the differences that I've noticed in using all of these, because they're vastly different, and I think it's really important. So, what I was saying about the sharpening of this on the Creeley compounds was basically that this sharpening, why do I keep saying sharpening? Sharp condition emulsion for stropping, it kind of reminds me of a hybrid compound, because you can restore dull edges on it, or you can polish, or you can refine. You can kind of do anything, because this compound is not finicky, okay? It is way thicker than gunny juice or stroppy stuff. Those are both very liquidy. It is a cream. It is a leather conditioner. You can put it straight on basswood, as you see here, but it's the consistency of literal human hair conditioner, okay? So it is a cream that you rub on, and when it dries, it kind of feels like aluminum oxide compound, but not as waxy, okay? So you can literally do anything with this. That's what I've noticed. I have some examples here of the different compounds I'm talking about, so I can really show you what I mean. So gunny juice is really thin and really fine, okay? So I've noticed, and let me just preface with the fact that I've been testing the gunny juice for 2 years. The aluminum oxide type compounds over 10. The stroppy stuff for, I want to say, 4 months. And the sharp condition just came in. I've been using it nonstop, okay? This is like the evolution of things. So, this generic strop loaded with gunny juice, we have 0.5 micron and 3 micron, okay? This is a generic strop from DLT. It was $17.99 when I got it. It's dual-sided, and it's thick as you can see, thick leather. It's a little plushy. I don't know if the camera will pick up the fuzzies, but hopefully you can kind of see it. It's a little bit fuzzy, a little bit thick, and it's decently hard, but it's got a little bit of give to it, and all leather will, but you can very distinctly feel the give in this, okay? I've used this strop, these types of strop with the gunny juice on them a number of times. I can, depending on how dull the knife is, and depending on the micron, if I use like the 3 micron, and the knife isn't ridiculously dull, I can bring it back to hair popping sharp. But what I have found is that gunny juice is really good at polishing already sharp bevels, and if you unfortunately put the gunny juice on a kind of softer, plushier leather like this, because it is so thin, it seeps down into the leather. You would have to use like an entire bottle of it to get it more to the surface, and you will see here, I really hope the camera will kind of focus, but the lighting is awful right now from the storm. Oh, it's not going to focus. Hopefully you can see the leather is very fuzzy. So is there compound? Is there emulsion on those little fuzzies on a microscopic level? Yes. But are you contacting like a hell of a lot of the compound when you strop on this? No, because it got sucked up it got absorbed into the leather, and I think you would have to use an excess amount to get it to the very surface enough where it's actually doing something productive. You'd have to use like a whole bottle, okay? And again, I'm talking in complete general terms here. This isn't like, this is what I've experienced, what I've determined through my testing, which is a lot of actual use, okay? Maybe it won't be the same for everyone, but this is just what I've noticed. So I kind of stopped putting gunny juice on leather because generally speaking, I feel it just doesn't work as well. End of story. So then we go to basswood or balsa, whatever. Okay, this is balsa. I would prefer basswood. I think it's a little harder, a little less spongy, but either way, the gunny juice does much better on some sort of piece of wood. There's less give to it. It works much better. This setup is way better at bringing back duller edges. If you put the gunny juice straight on basswood or balsa, whatever, you can absolutely bring back an edge to hair popping sharp with the gunny juice, kind of regardless of what micron. Like I said, I kind of prefer the bigger grit. But the whole point is, wonderful product, just a little finicky. There are kind of rules, I guess. You don't want to use cheap leather. You don't want to use thick leather. You don't want to use soft leather. Gunny juice works really well on wood, okay? So the whole point of this is it a good product? Yes. Does it have some characteristics that lead it to mild restrictions? Also, yes, okay? So we'll put that one aside. Let's talk about aluminum oxide. Let's talk about like the Bark River compounds, okay? The kind of more old school stuff. The crayon, the brick that you rub onto the strop, onto leather, all right? Here I have a strop, again, very generic strop. It's a paddle strop, leather on both sides, same thickness as the other one, kind of fuzzy, but you know, decently hard. We've got I think we have 3,000 on one side and 6,000 on the other, okay? I've noticed with the Bark River compound specifically, it is super aggressive. I have literally raised burrs on the 3,000 side. I also feel it's not equivalent to like a 3,000 grit stone. I just feel like the Bark River measurements are a little off because like I said, I can literally raise a burr on this 3,000 grit side. You can like borderline sharpen a knife on the Bark River compound, but we'll talk about this and just kind of aluminum oxide, chromium oxide, whatever, compounds as a whole, the color on old school stuff. What I don't like about it is that it disintegrates and deteriorates extremely fast, okay? Everyone knows when you have these paddle strops with the leather and you put the color on compound, it loads up very quick. That's why there's hundreds of videos on YouTube of how to clean your leather strop. Some people use a razor blade and scrape off the loaded compound and then condition the leather. Some people clean it with like olive oil. There are 10 different ways to unload a strop from the color on compound. The issue with it is that it's wax. It's waxy. So when you put it on, you'll see those different, oh, hold on. See those different colors, those different shades? That's just areas where the wax has flattened out, collected metal, and become kind of glassy, almost kind of slick, okay? Because it's literally wax. So it just grabs all the material, holds it, and then you end up kind of skating across it because it's loaded with, you know, metal particles, dirt, grime, whatever. The good thing about these compounds like that, they actually work really well. So if you kind of keep up with cleaning your strop, you can get a very aggressive edge off of these old school compounds. They, like I said, they deteriorate very quickly, but when they work really well, okay? And I like that you don't have to use an entire brick to load your strop because it's waxy. It has an actual consistency. So when you color it on, even if you have a plushy leather, it's just clogging those pores. It's just literally clogging all the pores. You are genuinely actually hitting the compound when you strop. You can see it almost has a sheen to it. See that? And that sheen is not the leather, obviously. Leather isn't shiny unless you tan it, whatever. But look, that's plushy, fuzzy leather, and it's actually shiny because of the compound. That's great. That means the compound is literally sitting on top of the leather and you are hitting that abrasive with your knife. When you go to strop, if I were to drag this across here, I'm hitting that shiny, waxy stuff, which is the abrasive. That's great. That's what we want. So that's a good thing about the old school stuff, is that it's so thick that it kind of clogs everything and you're actually getting to use it, right? But it deteriorates super fast, it disintegrates, it gets loaded super fast, it gets chunky and uneven because it's waxy, and it can be hard to apply. So there are good and bad things about the old school stuff, and I think there's a reason why we have evolution with it, right? There's always something we can improve on. So after the color on stuff, we obviously started seeing diamond emulsions and CBNs or whatever hit the market, the gunny juice, the stroppy stuff, right? Stroppy stuff, here's another one. Stroppy stuff was a little unique because it's more waxy once you load the strop compared to gunny juice. Gunny juice leaves kind of a matte finish. I've noticed with stroppy stuff, let me see if I can catch it on camera. Can you see the light reflecting up there? Kind of like with the color on aluminum oxide. You have a little bit of sheen, right? So stroppy stuff is extremely liquidy. It's literally so thin, but loaded with high quality diamonds, and it leaves a little bit of that waxy sheen on top, so it actually doesn't seem to wear away very quickly. I really like stroppy stuff on basswood, on smooth, hard leather like this. I don't really use it on this plushy, see the suede plushy side, don't even bother with it. But the stroppy stuff is cool because when it dries, it's waxy, which is what I actually really kind of like about the old school stuff. If it's on a super thin, tiny porous leather, you really actually are hitting that compound, and it's very, very efficient. And then if you put it on basswood, you're really good to go because it's much harder than leather and it seems to apply better. But one of the issues I've noticed with stroppy stuff is that it's so thin, it's so liquidy that when you go to apply it and spray it, you're wasting so much of it just in the application. If you're supposed to hold it kind of far away. He made a video on like atomizing it or whatever. You have to hold it however many inches away with certain products that he makes. But to get an even coat, you kind of have to hold it far away, and you can literally see it misting everywhere around your strop. Like, yeah, your strop too, but it's misting all around it, and you're wasting a bunch of it because it's so fine, it's so liquidy. Sorry, I just had a hiccup. I just housed a sandwich. Absolutely housed. It was gross. So that leads us back to the Sharp Condition Stropping emulsion from Gary. It applies like a liquid version of the aluminum oxide stuff. Like, it's very thick. It's literally like a lotion, okay? Very thick. You put it on here, and if you don't touch it, it just sits there. I made a video about it. You can go watch it. So it kind of applies in terms of thickness like the aluminum oxide, but you can evenly distribute it like stroppy stuff or gunny juice, because it is a liquid. It's just a very thick liquid, but you can evenly distribute it. It's loaded with diamonds, so it does not break down nearly as fast as the color on stuff, right? Because that's the issue, is that the abrasive in the color on stuff is not, it's not very hard, it's very cheap, okay? Whereas when you use the mono diamonds, this will last you a long time on here. It's not going to disintegrate, it's not going to break down nearly as fast as the other stuff. So you get kind of the best of both worlds, a hybrid. You got kind of that waxy, thicker application finish. It wears very slowly because they're high quality diamonds, okay? And you can put it on either side. You can do basswood, balsa wood, leather. In my opinion, it works best on really thin, hard leather like this, but I would hypothesize that even if you were to use it on a plushy strop, I don't think you would have adverse effects like with gunny juice. Remember I said with I did that experiment where I stropped on this with my knife and it ended up dulling it. I think that is like 98% the strop, but that's kind of special in itself of proving that something is off, right? Is like, if you can't apply the compound to any strop, well, then you have to pay attention to the type of strop that you're buying or making, and that can be tricky sometimes, right? So hypothetically speaking, and I am going to test this, if you can take the Sharp Condition Diamond Emulsion Leather Conditioner and apply it to basswood, balsa wood, thin leather, thick leather, hard leather, plushy leather, and you don't have those restrictions, and it just works across the board at varying levels but does not dull your knife, that to me is superior, right? That to me is superior. We're going to see if that happens, but I'm basically going to try applying the Sharp Condition to leather. It may even be this exact piece, but leather like this, soft, squishy, suede, plushy, goo goo gaga, mama loves it. This I want to try with the Sharp Condition because my guess and hypothesis is that because the Sharp Condition is so thick and so overloaded with high quality diamonds, I think I can even get it to work on something plushy like this. Whereas this for stroppy stuff or for gunny juice is like an absolute no-go. It don't even bother. It's trash, okay? You just can't. But I'm really curious to see if I can get this type of leather to work with the Sharp Condition, because it has all the right goodies integrated into it to have it work for what I would guess almost anything. So we'll see about that. But I wanted to really clear that up because I'm just noticing way less issues, way less finicky things with the Sharp Condition compared to like a lot of other stuff on the market. And I have back there that cabinet that's open, that's airing out, that one. It is chock full of sharpening stones, strops, diamond emulsions, CBN, homemade stuff, poly, mono, anything that you can think of is in that cabinet. So this is like years and years of testing and figuring out what really, really works and what kind of doesn't and all of these things. And I just genuinely am saying that the sharp condition really seems to fix a number of the issues that I found with a lot of other products. No, I'm not being paid in any capacity for anything that I do, but especially not from Gary or anything, okay? I'm not being paid to say this. This is like genuine observance, genuine experience, okay? And what I've kind of been longing for in a compound for a while. And that's not to say that gunny juice or stroppy stuff is bad. It's not. It's great. I have bottles of it. I love both of them. I'm just finding they're really good at like certain things, whereas the sharp condition is good at everything, depending on what micron you get, and you can put it on whatever, and it just is easier. So I really hope that all makes sense. I hope that you enjoyed that. This knife was absolutely incredible to test and to use. Absolute razor blade. Greg does incredible work, so please check him out. He makes phenomenal knives. You can find him on Instagram, Deer Rock Knives. I will link him down below, but I am obsessed with his work. This is a fabulous knife, and it was a great little test dummy for tinkering with the sharp condition and seeing what it can really do, and it is absolutely incredible. So I will link Gary down below, Greg. Thank you for watching. Hopefully that was informative. Sorry for all of the cuts and the crazy stuff, but I love you guys. I'll see you soon. Go use your shit. Beep boop. Learn how to sharpen your moms. I'll see you guys on the next video. I love you so much, fam. Take care.